places you don't talk about at parties. You want me on that wall. You need me on that wall.
Keep that frequency clear.
And now it's conspiracy. See, they've made that something that should not be even entertained for a minute, that powerful people might get together and have a plan. Doesn't happen. You're a kook. You're a conspiracy buff.
You're watching The Truth is Viral, the only news program on the internet trusted to deliver the truth since 2008. And now, here's your host, Mr. Bobby Powell.
Welcome back to The Truth is Viral on the Liberty One Network. My name is Bob Powell, and it's August 22nd, 2018. The subject of today's show is illegal immigration, in particular, the disturbing case of Mollie Tibbetts, who was killed, murdered violently and brutally by a DACA dreamer by the name of Christian Rivera. Rivera made his initial appearance in an Iowa courtroom this morning, and first thing his lawyer did was try to get the media banned from the courtroom.
The prejudice here is the decision beforehand to lean in favor of one side or the other, which prevents justice. In this particular case, the coverage that's out there is leaning all one way. And in fact, the government has weighed in at the highest levels of a predisposition that this young man, Christian, is guilty. But in our system of justice, he's entitled to that presumption of innocence until some evidence is presented. At this time, there's been no evidence presented, Your Honor. And so we're urging the court to prevent the cameras from coming in here, which possibly could show some sort of bias or prejudice, and get it into this political controversy of portraying Christian as something that he isn't. In some ways, I view this as a political payback for what's swirling around in terms of the media. And the media is feeding into it. They have not made efforts, as far as I can see, to give justice or any type of leaning towards this presumption of innocence. And therefore, we're asking this court to exclude the media from these proceedings, because it could be just one nod of the head, one glance, one sleight of hand that will be partially taken out of context and presented over and over, which would be highly prejudicial to the defendant. So I urge the court to exclude the media from these proceedings.
But the judge wasn't having any part of that.
The defendant's right to a fair trial is not prejudiced by the publicity as related to the initial appearance. Reasonable alternatives have been established, including limiting media coverage to one video camera and one still camera. Today's initial appearance will be held in open court, and the media will be allowed to stay in the courtroom.
She was even nice enough to read Rivera his rights.
Mr. Rivera, this is your initial appearance on the charge of murder in the first degree and on an immigration detainer notice of action filed by the Department of Homeland Security. The purpose of an initial appearance is to make sure you understand the charges against you, to review any request for an appointment of an attorney, to set further proceedings or court dates in this matter, and to discuss your terms of release from jail. Mr. Rivera, do you have any questions about the things we'll be covering today?
No.
Mr. Rivera, you have been charged with murder in the first degree in violation of Iowa Code Section 707.2 sub 1 sub A, a Class A felony. Mr. Rivera, have you been given a copy of this paperwork?
Yes.
The Department of Homeland Security has filed an immigration detainer notice of action for you. Mr. Rivera, have you received a copy of this paperwork?
I believe so.
Mr. Rivera, I'm now going to review rights that every defendant has in a criminal action. These include the following. You have the right to an attorney. Every defendant has the right to retain legal counsel and shall be allowed reasonable time and opportunity to consult an attorney. In the event you are indigent and desire counsel, and if the offense is a serious misdemeanor or greater, an attorney can be appointed to represent you. Mr. Rivera, at this time you are represented by a privately retained attorney, Alan Richards. Do you wish to continue with this private representation, or do you wish to file an application for a court-appointed attorney?
No, with Richard.
Mr. Rivera, if at any time today, during today's proceedings, you wish to talk to your attorney, please let me know and I'll stop today's hearing.
Okay.
Next, you have the right to be released from custody. Every defendant in custody has the right, subject to conditions, to be released from custody pending judgment. A defendant may be released from custody on his or her own personal recognizance or on conditions as the court determines, as will reasonably assure the defendant's appearance as required and will reasonably assure the public's safety. If the court imposes conditions for defendant's release and defendant is unable to meet these conditions, the defendant has the right to request a bond review hearing. If the defendant is indigent and unable to retain legal counsel, the court will appoint an attorney to represent you for the purposes of this bond review hearing. Next, you have the right against self-incrimination. A defendant is not required to make any statement concerning the offense charged to the court, to any law enforcement officer, or to any other person. But if the defendant makes any such statements, those statements can be used against the defendant. And finally, defendants have a right to trial. Every defendant has the right to a trial and to be tried by a jury if requested. At such trial, defendant has the right to assistance of counsel, the right to confront and cross-examine witnesses against him, the right not to be compelled to incriminate himself, and the right to subpoena the attendance of any witness on your behalf.
And tell him of any possible penalties that might be inflicted upon him should he be found guilty.
Mr. Rivera, I now need to review with you the maximum penalties for your charge. If found guilty of the charge of murder in the first degree, the maximum penalty will be imposed. The maximum penalty is life in prison without the possibility of parole. This sentence cannot be deferred or suspended. The defendant will be required to provide a DNA sample and may be required to register with the Sex Offender Registry. And if not a U.S. citizen, a plea of guilty can result in additional immigration consequences up to and including deportation. The immigration detainer notice of action requires that at the completion of this criminal matter, you be transferred to the Department of Homeland Security to keep complete processing and assessment of your citizenship.
Too bad that Mollie Tibbetts doesn't have any of those rights anymore. The only right she's got is to be dead. But then the judge goes on to hear bail motions.
Mr. Rivera, we're now going to discuss the terms of your release from jail. I must now set bond in terms of your release from jail. In making these decisions, I take into account whether you will appear for future hearings if you are released, and whether the public will be safe if you are released. Mr. Brown, do you wish to make any arguments on behalf of this?
Just briefly, Judge. Yesterday, whenever we discussed this charge and authorized it, it was presented to Judge Gammon, I believe. We had no input on the bond. I noticed that she had initially set a bond amount as $1 million cash only. If I had been asked at that time what I thought the bond should be, I would have requested a $5 million bond cash only. That's what we would request here. We think it is appropriate given the severity of the charge, his immigration status, at least as it's been described to me, and the fact that what he's accused of obviously is a very heinous crime, and certainly the safety of the community should be foremost in the court's mind whenever setting bonds. So that's what we would request, that bond be set amount of $5 million cash only.
Thank you. Mr. Richards, would you like to make any argument on bond in terms of release?
Yes, Your Honor. Christian is a young man. He's been working for a number of years for a respectable person in this community, no prior criminal record. He sits here presumed innocent. There's been no evidence at all introduced to the court, and there is actually no history. When he came to this country as a minor, he had the equivalent of a 7th, maybe 8th grade education, so his understanding of these proceedings is what's going on. We are urging the court to be fair to Christian with his rights, including his bond. And I have great respect for the court and your honor that you will protect those rights, and so we ask you to do that, but one of those would be setting a bond that at least somewhat may be attainable. We will take a look at your ruling and probably ask for a review hearing on the matter regardless.
Thank you. Mr. Rivera, the following terms of release from jail are ordered. Bond in the amount of $5 million, cash only, in the name of the defendant only, and only after approval for pretrial release by the Department of Corrections. If released, you may not leave Poweshiek County, Iowa without written consent of the court. You must turn over your passport or any other travel documents issued by the United States or any other country to the Poweshiek County Sheriff's Office within 24 hours of this initial appearance. You must submit to the Department of Corrections for pretrial release supervision for review, approval, and registration for participation by the department at least 48 hours prior to the release from jail. That means that if you are not accepted for supervision by the Department of Corrections, you will not be able to post bond to be released from jail.
$5 million bail is ridiculous. There should be no bail. This DACA dreamer is exactly what he was, came here as a child, has already confessed, and led police to the body of that poor young lady. That's just sad, folks. That's just really sad. Of course, he wouldn't need any bail at all if he was not in the country to begin with. You know, there are a lot of families that have been torn apart by criminal illegal aliens. Here are just a couple.
I was at home when I got the phone call from the hospital.
He was hit head-on by a repeat illegal alien criminal.
Known gang member came in the back and he fired the gun and struck my son in the arm.
Trying to get away, he drove over my son's body. He backed up, driving over him a second time.
Rear-ended is estimated 62 miles an hour.
He strangled him and let him go to see if he was breathing. Strangled him over and over and over until death.
And he dragged Matthew a quarter of a mile to his death.
He rear-ended her, killing her.
He went to a field and put Josh out and the gasoline on him and lit him on fire.
Previously deported about 1.5 to 2 years before.
This man wasn't supposed to be here.
My separation.
My separation.
My separation. My separation.
My separation.
My separation.
My separation is permanent.
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 Our separation is permanent.
So what about their rights? Don't they matter? Not to the liberal media and politicians, apparently. Because they're all over the airwaves talking about how great these kids are, these DACA dreamers. Well, I don't think they're so great. Bet Mollie's parents don't think they're so great. Bet Kate Steinley's parents don't think they're so great. Bet hundreds of other families who've been torn apart don't think they're so great. But the media just loves them.
Well, Vox and ProPublica news outlets coming out with reporting there that makes it look like they're portraying MS-13 gang members as nice kids who ride bikes and work after-school jobs. Let's bring in American Majority founder and CEO Ned Ryan. Ned, your take on this?
This is so deeply irresponsible and irrational. Liz, this is a full-blown case of Trump derangement syndrome. This is one of the most violent gangs, not only in this country, but the world. And the Obama administration, which got very little right, at least had the wherewithal to call this a transnational criminal organization. I mean, Trump called them animals. Their motto is kill, rape, and control. And in Suffolk County, New York, between January of 2016 and June of 2017, MS-13 was responsible for 40% of the murders in that county. And beyond the violence and the murder and the drug trafficking, I think the thing that people need to understand is part of the real income for MS-13 is sex trafficking of girls sometimes as young as 14. And what Vox has done has essentially become apologists for sex traffickers of young girls.
You know, here's the thing. Long Island, New York, Ned, has been one of the regions really battling this gang. It murdered 17 people, including children, in a 16-month period between 2016 and 2017. This gang machetes and dismembers individuals to the point where police can't identify the victims.
They are animals in the truest sense of the word. Their behavior is completely revolting. And Trump is right to throw the full weight of law enforcement, to deport them, to jail them, to rid them, to deport them from this country. This is a real issue, and Trump has taken it head on. And Liz, I'm in Northern Virginia. We've been dealing with MS-13 in the Northern Virginia counties for years before Trump brought this to the forefront. But he is exactly right. But this is the other thing, too, that's amazing about all of this, Liz. When Trump derangement syndrome hits, the amazing things that the left does to try to defend just to be antagonistic towards Trump. Here you have Trump being an advocate for law enforcement, for law and order in our society, and the left now defending violent gang members who are sex traffickers.
You know, we've seen pundits say this story is about race baiting, and to your point, Ned, the White House is saying, listen, we're talking to the victims' families. And the victims' families are in severe pain over this. This is sort of like being in touch or out of touch with what's going on in this country. Here's Mark Stein attacking Vox over this video. Let's listen to what Mark Stein said.
So, of course, the left now supports MS-13. MS-13, they're like high school valedictorians with machetes. Are they just like kids doing after-school jobs, riding around on bicycles?
So here are the facts. In 2016 and part of 2017, we saw 17 homicides that MS-13 committed. That's 17 homicides in just 16 months. This is an extremely dangerous gang. I would submit probably one of the most dangerous street gangs that we have in the United States.
Defenders of this video saying they were just trying to do reporting, that people attacking their reporting are doing race baiting. The point to debate is that, you know, this is a problem in this country, period. Let's stop attacking each other and just let's go out there and say videos like this are misleading, period, and get at the root cause. Right, Ned?
Oh, 100%. I mean, this is revolting. The thing that I think is interesting, Liz, the American people have a deep sense of fairness. They have a deep sense of common sense. And when they see all these facts and understand, wait a minute, we know what MS-13 is about. They're a violent gang. They are revolting. And now we have Vox and ProPublica trying to defend them. Something's wrong. And again, the American people can see through this. So in some ways, you realize all Vox and ProPublica are doing are actually advancing Trump's cause with the American people because they realize he's actually doing the right thing while they're trying to be apologists for truly awful human beings.
And Ned Ryan, we love having you on. Come back soon, sir. Thanks for coming in.
I want to get one last question in here because it is a story, a very important story in the news. It has to do with Mollie Tibbetts, the young woman in Iowa who was murdered. Her body believed to be found yesterday. A person has been charged with it. This person is an undocumented immigrant. Mike Pence and the president have suggested the immigration laws need to be stronger so that people like this man who was accused of this murder were not in the country. Your reaction?
You know, I'm so sorry for the family here, and I know this is hard, not only for the family, but for the people in her community, the people throughout Iowa. But one of the things we have to remember is we need an immigration system that is effective, that focuses on where real problems are. Last month, I went down to the border, And I saw where children had been taken away from their mothers. I met with those mothers who had been lied to, who didn't know where their children were, who hadn't had a chance to talk to their children. And there was no plan for how they would be reunified with their children. I think we need immigration laws that focus on people who pose a real threat. And I don't think mamas and babies are the place that we should be spending our resources. Separating a mama from a baby does not make this country safer.
Let me tell you something there, Pocahontas. We're not talking about mamas and babies here. We're talking about animals. Real animals. I've seen what these MS-13 guys do. As I've said before, I troll the internet, the bowels of the internet, so that you don't have to. I've seen horrible things that will haunt me for the rest of my days. I can't believe that some people can be so inhuman to one another. I've seen a little boy, couldn't have been more than 8 or 9 years old, have his hands hacked off with a machete. Then he was beheaded. And it's unclear whether it was his father or an older brother with him, but that man was flayed alive. Skinned alive. The skin from his chest was cut off. You could see his heart beating. And his lungs expanding through his rib cage because there was no more musculature or fascia to hold it inside. President Trump was right. They're animals.
Good evening and welcome to Tucker Carlson tonight. During a roundtable with elected officials and law enforcement yesterday, President Trump took a question about the gang MS-13. As he has before, the president expressed his thoughts on the subject bluntly.
We're taking people out of the country. You wouldn't believe how bad these people are. These aren't people. These are animals.
Well, if anything, that's a mild description. Dogs are animals, and a lot of them sleep on the bed. You wouldn't want to be anywhere near MS-13. They traffic in drugs, weapons, and human beings, young girls. Unlike animals, they kill for fun, often with machetes. They terrorize the poor and the vulnerable. They've made El Salvador the most dangerous country in the world. There is literally no defending them, and yet the left is defending them. Here's how the New York Times described what the president said, quote, Trump lashed out at undocumented immigrants during a White House meeting, calling those trying to breach the country's borders animals. Over at Jeff Bezos' vanity publication, The Washington Post, there was this, quote, Trump evokes an ugly history of dehumanization. So the president is a Nazi for criticizing a violent street gang. Newspapers haven't been this yellow since they started the Spanish-American War. For her part, over at the House, Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi raced to the nearest microphone to defend the dignity of MS-13. Watch this.
We're all God's children. There's a spark of divinity in every person on earth. And so when the President of the United States says about undocumented immigrants, these aren't people, these are animals, you have to wonder, does he not believe in the spark of divinity, the dignity and worth of every person? Every day that you think you've seen it all, along comes another manifestation of why their policies are so inhumane.
Well, that's not just dishonest, though obviously it is. It's lunatic. Why would the left be defending the country's most violent street gang? Trump has made them irrational. That's part of it. But the left also senses a threat to its most basic worldview. MS-13 is a living reminder that the left's position on immigration is fundamentally a lie. The media tell you every day that every immigrant, legal or not, is a future brain surgeon or tech company founder. Therefore, immigration controls are unnecessary. If they admit that MS-13 is actually bad and must be stopped, they'd have to also admit that when some countries send their people here, they aren't sending their best. A lot of immigrants are great, for sure. Some of them are rapists, though. Some join MS-13. That's just true. They're not all the same because people aren't all the same. That's the point of our immigration law. They're not the same. We should sort the good from the bad. But that's too much for the left. It suggests that this might be a real country whose actual citizens have interests that are worth protecting. Yesterday on Twitter, the governor of California, Jerry Brown, went after the president's views on immigration, and he ended his tweet this way, quote, "We, the citizens of the fifth largest economy in the world, are not impressed." Citizens of the economy. That says it all. To the modern left, you're not an American with a culture and a history and a collective identity. You're a citizen of the economy, a cog in the machine of global capitalism. To Jerry Brown and Nancy Pelosi and their many donors, America's just another private equity scheme. Their pledge is different from yours. And to the economy for which it stands, one economy indivisible with open borders and low wages for all. That's the future they promise. Don't worry, it'll sound better in Spain.
Liberals are lying, folks. There's absolutely nothing good about illegal immigration. Not a thing. Not only have these families been torn apart, but they're sucking the wealth of our nation dry, not contributing to it at all. They've turned California into a real shithole, a literal shithole. Their streets are filled with human waste, drug addicts everywhere. Is that what we want for America? Liberalism like that? I don't think so. Now, aside from my experiences on the internet, I have had a personal experience with the effects of illegal immigration. And it's going to tear your heart out. They say, write what you know in journalism school. And when we come back from this commercial, I'm going to tell you exactly what I know.
I'm Pete Santilli, and you're watching The Truth is Viral.
Do not click away. We'll be back with more in just a moment.
Illegal immigration affects all of us. And I didn't realize how much until my wife died in 2015. She'd fought a long, hard battle with cancer. And when it came time to bring her home, the Obamacare program that would have provided her with skilled hospice was at capacity. So they didn't have any more money. Federal government under Obama had been giving it all to these DACA dreamers. Make sure they have health care. Make sure that these illegal aliens are able to go to college for the cost of 1 credit hour of instruction at a California university, a publicly funded, taxpayer-funded university. My wife could have had the hospice care that she needed. But it's not important to liberals. The rights of Americans are not important to liberals. The fact that we pay taxes all of our lives and support somebody that shouldn't be here in the first place, it's not important to liberals. So here's my story, and it's going to make you sick. Welcome back to The Truth is Viral. My name is Bob Powell, and folks, this one's been a while coming. I wanted to do it today. It's a symbolic day, because 1 year ago today, my beloved wife, Delynn, lost her battle with colorectal and liver cancer. She'd fought very bravely for 3 years. And I thought that at one point we had it made. I guess God needed her more than I did. Although I can't imagine how. A woman was part of my life for 28 years, a significant part. I mean, I can count on one hand the number of times that we were apart for more than 12 hours over that 28-year period. She was tough. I really wanted her to stick around for our 25th anniversary, and she made it with 2 days left to spare. But, you know, how do you move on after losing somebody that has literally been the other half of you for over half of your life? Somebody that's helped you raise 5 wonderful children. And all of a sudden you're alone. But anyway, I promised I wasn't going to get too teary in this show. But I'd like to address this to President Barack Obama. Because he promised that Obamacare would be the bee's knees, that people like myself and my wife would be covered. That people could keep their doctors. Their insurance rates wouldn't rise. Well, that was all a lie. Every bit of it, Mr. President. To coin the phrase, you goobered us. You know, Romney Care only worked because Romney could pawn the excess costs off on the federal government. Well, you can't federalize a program like that because there's nobody to pawn the costs off on. That's why insurance companies are raising their rates, and some are even dropping Obamacare coverage altogether. So your name brand legislation is going to label you as one of the greatest failures that this country's ever seen. When my wife was in the hospital getting ready to come home for the last time, we applied for skilled home health care for, hospice. And we received this letter that told us that the program that pays for in-home health care was at capacity. It's funny how you can find money to pay for cradle-to-grave health care for illegal immigrants, not undocumented immigrants, sir. Illegal immigrants. They have committed a crime by coming into the United States without permission. They don't pay into the system at all because they are undocumented workers. But they get free schooling and health care. You just managed to find $4.5 billion to bring Syrian refugees to the United States. How many of those are Christians? I think I read a piece that said that only 8 of the first 80,000 people that you brought or wanted to bring over were Christians, even though they were the ones that were being specifically targeted by ISIS. But these undocumented workers don't pay into the system. My wife worked 2 and 3 jobs at a time for 30 years, paying into Medicare with every check. But when it comes right down to it, the program that would have provided her with end-of-life care was at capacity. They had no more money. Thank God that I'd had some nursing training. Thank God that I have family members that were skilled enough to come and help us. But it was left up to us. If my wife had been alone, who would have taken care of her? You want to know what's even more disgusting? I had a woman come on my show. She was a vendor for the Michigan Department of Human Services. That means that she goes around to all of the Medicaid offices all around the state of Michigan. She called me and she told me about this game that workers are playing. It's called Brownie Points, where they get literally a brownie point every time they deny care to a person who would otherwise be eligible, or deny benefits to a person that would otherwise be eligible. And they get even bonus points if that person happens to be white.
I found this lady. She worked in the basement of a church in Highland Park, Michigan, which was a pretty bad area. And the church gave her the basement to run a clinic, a legal clinic for women, single mothers on welfare that were constantly getting their food stamps shut off, their checks shut off, their medical cards shut off. And it was like this constant game. They were constantly getting something shut off. And it was actually an African American woman that told me this. She said, "There's a grievance slip you can get. They have to have it at every counter at every welfare office in Michigan." She said, she says there's a number on there. She said, you call this place called Westside Mothers. They'll tell you to fill out the grievance and come down and see them. You get down there and they help you fill out the grievance, and they tell you how the welfare system works. So I went down there to find out. Coming to find out, every time they shut off one of your benefits or deny you a benefit you applied for, they get a brownie point. And when it comes time for promotion, the one with the most brownie points gets the promotion, or let's say the raise in pay, also. They will tell you you don't qualify, and every time they tell you you don't qualify for something, they get a brownie point, when in fact you do. You have to fight for a lot of this stuff. And this all goes in line with Obamacare. Obamacare is a diversity program, okay? And all welfare workers, Medicare, Social Security workers have to, it's mandatory, take diversity training, which is the white guilt training, to make it okay for them to beat you up and beat other white people up under the law, basically is what it amounts to. And only minority statuses truly count.
It's not an unfounded accusation, sir. Not only do I have this vendor who came forward, but there's also a lawyer down in Detroit that's willing to testify to the same thing. This is all because of the diversity training that you put into place. So when it boils right down to it, when it comes right down to it, my wife could very well have been denied end-of-life care because of the color of her skin. Taking all of this into account, Mr. President, I don't know what to tell you. I think you're a despicable individual. You lied to the American people, and according to the book of Revelation, all liars are destined for the pits of hell. You say you're a Christian. Most people don't believe it, but you say that you are. You read that verse in Revelations carefully, sir. All liars, including you and Hillary Clinton, are destined for hell. And that's not me saying that. That's Almighty God. You won't justify yourself to me. You won't justify yourself to the American people. All you do is lie. But you are going to have to justify yourself before the coming king, and you won't be able to. This is your come to Jesus moment. You know as well as I do what's going on, how close we are to the second coming of Jesus Christ. You need to turn your life around. You need to stop lying and try to make amends for the harm that you've caused. If you want a legacy, let it be that. Let it be that at the end of your presidency, you realized what a mess you have made of this country. You owned up to it and did what you could to repair the damage. From Obamacare to the intentional division of the races that you've been fostering, you've got a lot of work to do. I don't expect an answer to this video, but I just needed to let you know how I feel. You'd better get on your knees and pray to Almighty God for forgiveness, Barack Obama. Because if you don't, you are destined for the fiery pits of hell. Now, I realize that this next part of the video isn't necessarily Barack Obama's fault. Ever since the Tylenol scare, I think it was in 1979, pharmaceutical companies have been tamper-proofing their products and just making the restrictions of medicine ridiculous. After my wife died, there was a lot of medicine left over. Now, this is brand new medicine. It's never been touched, never been opened. I couldn't return it to the pharmacy. They wouldn't take it. I couldn't donate it to the local clinics. They wouldn't take it. I couldn't send it back to the manufacturers. They wouldn't take it. I couldn't donate it to charity. They wouldn't take it. Couldn't give it to a friend in need of insulin or these other drugs. Had I done that, I would be guilty of a felony. I called the Michigan State Police Post here in Alpena, Michigan, and I asked them, what can I do? Where can I take these drugs so that they'll do some good for somebody else? And I was told that it is against the law to return, to do anything with even factory sealed medications. Completely tamper proof, other than destroy them. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to destroy these medicines right here. Let's start off with these insulin pens. These are $100 a piece. Novolog, $300 a bottle. Lantus, $300 a bottle. 600, 900, 12 or 900, yeah, 1200, 1500, 1800, 2100, 2400, 2700, $3,000 down the tubes. This is a medication called Lovenox or enoxaparin. They come in these factory sealed single-use syringes. $600 a box. Pop, and that's gone. I mean, in fact, you know what? I'm not going to bother beating all these up. I got something better in mind. Let's go outside to my burn barrel for a second. $600, $1,200, $1,800. So, yeah, that medicine had a retail value of $8,100, all told. And it's just a shame. But like I said, illegal immigrants do not contribute to the general welfare. They don't pay any taxes. All they do is suck off the American teat. I know. I'll live through it. And something's got to be done. Not only are they a scourge on our economy, but a good portion of them are violent. Just by coming to the United States without permission, they're committing a crime. Yet California and other states want to have sanctuary cities or even sanctuary states to protect these illegal aliens from justice from the federal government. I think the National Guard is in order. Yeah. Put a few battalions of the National Guard down on the border until that wall is built. Keep illegal aliens out of the country, period. Then you don't have to worry about the mamas being separated from their babies. You know, American families are separated all the time when somebody commits a crime. If a father or a mother commits a felony and has to go to prison, they don't get to take their babies to jail with them. What makes these people so special? I don't get it. Yeah, I understand wanting to take care of the less fortunate. I do what I can to contribute to charity all the time. I don't have any money, but I do contribute my talents and use my show to publicize upcoming charity events and provide commercials for local charities free of charge. That's what I can do. Okay, it doesn't cost me anything to sit at my computer and make a 30-second video for a local charity. But it's like a life raft, okay? It can only take on so much water. It can only take on so many survivors until the life raft sinks and everybody drowns. And people just don't get it. Well, liberals don't get it. Poor Mollie Tibbetts didn't get it either. Ironically, the last tweet that she put out before she died was in favor of illegal immigration. There are people that were trying to protect her from the murder that took her life. And she wasn't listening to them. She was listening to her dumbass liberal college professors. And not to common sense. There's another tweet that shows what she thought, what she's been taught by these liberal idiots, these liberal lunatics. She tweeted, "I hate white people." God knows I've got sympathy for that girl and for her family. But it was the liberal policies that she believed in, these progressive communist policies that she believed in, things that were taught to her in college, that ultimately ended up taking her life. And it's a sad thing. So tonight I'm going to say a prayer for young Mollie. Hi, Orion. I'm going to get my kitty cam fixed up for you guys because Orion likes to sit up here with me. But yeah, I'm going to say a prayer for them because they're lost. They're absolutely out of their minds lost. They've got no common sense left. Must be a symptom of Trump derangement syndrome or Trump anxiety disorder or whatever they're calling it these days. I don't know. But they've just lost their mind. And you can't talk common sense into them. Believe me, I've tried. So we'll just have to pray that their eyes are opened and that they can see the truth eventually before too much more blood is shed. Don't forget, if you have the ability, please go to bobpowell.blogspot.com and hit that PayPal button and join me in my mission to save lives and win souls for Jesus Christ in these very last days. We really could use your help. YouTube has demonetized nearly all of my stuff. I'm going to get like $5 from them this month. So only with your help will we be able to continue. If you don't have the ability, or if you're on Social Security disability or something like that, I don't want your money. All you've got to do is like, comment, and share the video, and that will help bring it to the attention of someone that our Father in heaven will move to make a donation. So you can help greatly by liking, commenting, and sharing these videos of all of our Liberty One posts. We've got to get the truth out there, folks, because the truth will set you free. It really will. And the biggest truth I know is that Jesus Christ died for our sins. And he's offering the gift of salvation free to anybody that will ask for it. And we've got to get that word out. So if you can, give me a hand. Thank you for watching The Truth is Viral on the Liberty One Network. My name is Bob Powell. I'll see you Friday night at 7 p.m. And as always, God bless, Semper Fi, and hoorah.
Thank you for watching The Truth is Viral with your host, Bobby Powell. Make sure to follow The Apocalypse on Twitter at The Truth is Viral. Like The Truth is Viral on Facebook, and if you can, please remember to donate to the cause via PayPal at www.bobpowell.blogspot.com.